Dr. Curran. Now that you are stepping down from the presidency, we had some questions we wanted to ask you about your role as the president of the university.
Okay.
When you first began your position, what were you envisioning for the university?
You know, I'm thinking a lot about that these last couple of days, and it's funny because a lot of the things did happen that I would hoped happened. So one was basically the transformation of the campus. When I came, we had trucks parked on where the mall is. It wasn't a very green campus, and there was also a lot of physical things that had to happen, so that was important. And then, you know, probably much more important was the fact that we wanted to increase the academic reputation of the institution and also have the enrollment situation stabilize, increase demand for the institution. So again, they were the two big things. You know, you look at one, the academic profile of the institution, and now I always get from, you know, alumni from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't think I could get into UD now, you know, and that's a nice thing to say. And, you know, we're much more selective as an institution than we were before, and a building reputation.
So, what's your most cherished memory at UD?
My most cherished memory, I mean, there's so many of them, and I won't even try to catalog them, you know, today. But a lot of them, you know, revolve around what students have achieved, and I think you can obviously talk about athletic, you know, successes, you know, that we've had, which have been really outstanding, you know, the entire athletic program. But it's the same thing for when you go to like the scholarship dinner and a student gets up and he or she talks about what they did while they were at UD. And I always find it, you know, very humbling because you have this situation where a student is majoring, you know, in a challenging area, and he or she has done, you know, 5 or different other things. And so, I mean, there's a wide range, and, you know, what students' commitments to the institution are great. And so many students have represented the university, you know, well, and that's the great thing. There's no single thing. A lot of people immediately gravitate, say, well, you must be most proud of the acquisition of the, you know, NCR property. But, you know, in fact, that was very good for the university, and we really took advantage of the situation. But, you know, on a day-to-day basis, it's what the students do and the faculty do. So it's really a accumulated amount of pride about students and faculty.
And what is something you'll miss most about your role as being president of the university?
Probably what I'll miss most is people coming up to say, "Hey, Dr. Dan, you know what, you know." But you know, I see Brother Ray on campus, and people still continue to do this. It was interesting for me. I was talking to an alumni group, and they said, "Do you realize that about 30,000 students have graduated from UD when you were president?" And so for that 30,000 people, you're always Dr. Dan, so don't worry about it. But, you know, the fact that I'm going to come back and teach, it'll be a different type of interaction. So, again, that's part of it, and the students are really the joy of the whole experience. So right now I'll be figuring how I make those connections work over the long term.
How do you think you've left your mark? What's most, that one moment?
As I said, you know, marks for me are probably not marks for other people. You know, certainly people, I'll go back to the NCR building, people would talk about economic development. So I think if you're talking to people in the county or the city government, they would say, oh, it's, you know, the economic development that occurred around UD, and, you know, look at Brown Street today, look at, you know, General Electric, you know, look at Emerson being there, look at the world headquarters that you acquired. But, you know, it really, for me, comes down to what happened on campus. And again, if I walk on campus, you know, and as I thought very early on, from Marycrest to the library had to be green. You know, students, I didn't want any cars. I mean, the student be able to walk the length of it. And we took care of that this summer when we removed the road in front of St. Mary's. And for me, there's not one highlight. Some people would say it was crowd surfing, but really, I knew I was only the proxy for the team. The team did all the work, and Coach Miller, so I just happened to walk in and be there at the right time. So again, there's a lot of things people point to, but for me, it's actually those little things that make a difference. And I'll see you guys in a couple years, and you'll be doing something significant, and that'll make me feel good. So it's also a lasting, experience for a president. So.
And how would you say that you go about building rapport with students? I know everyone affectionately calls you Dr. Dan, but how do you go about building that rapport with them?
Well, the first thing I did was, I went with the Marinus brother. He's not here anymore. Father Ken, actually. I went right out into the student neighborhood. And it was pretty funny because I'd go up and I'd start talking to the students, and they knew Father Ken, and they didn't know me. And they go to, "Who's this?" And he's the new president. And they go, "No, he's not the new president. What are you talking about?" So I always thought, one, you try to get to as many student events as possible. Two, be accessible, to students. And I think that's one of the aspects of the university that separates us from a lot of other universities, that it's the president or the provost are available to students. Now, thank God not all students take advantage of it. It would be a very busy office. So again, I think it was just immediately reaching out, and when you could do things, do things. I think students knew I right away put to bed the thought that something was going to happen to the student neighborhoods, and we started to invest immediately there, and invest in Mary Crest. It had not been renovated since 1965 when it was built. So I think it's just being open, and but often I can walk from my house, which is at the extension of Kiefhaver and Sawmill, to my office in the summer in about 10 minutes. During the school year, it takes me a half hour because I keep getting stopped by people as I walk along, and that's great, and that's what you want. So I think it was myself being accessible, and it's also I think very easy to do because of the nature of the campus. Again and again, I've had people visit campus and say, "Hey, your students are great." We had the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities board on campus in October this year, and they just kept saying, I looked a little lost, and a student came up to me and said, "Do you need help? Where are you going?" And so I think it's one that I wanted to be connected to students, and I had at St. Joseph's, where I came from, a history of doing that. And two, the students here are just very open and very friendly.
So what do you think the future holds for you? I know that you're going on sabbatical. What do you kind of foresee yourself in 10 years?
So in 10 years, the plan is to be relatively unplanned next year. The last time I had a sabbatical may have been before you were born, so we won't go into that exact date. But I will go to China, and I'll probably do research with some people in Australia. And then the next year, it looks like I'll teach either both semesters, and they do quarter courses in China, or a semester in China and a semester on campus. So I expect to reintegrate into the classroom, and then start doing research again. And the one thing the board and Erskine want me to do is stay involved in Asia, because there's a lot of personal relationships, and that's just the nature of culture, that the relationships really carry, the interactions, and many of the things that the University of Dayton has been able to do has to do with personal relationships. So I'll continue to do that, but I'll be on campus. You'll see me at basketball games.
And kind of, we just wanted to talk a little bit about sabbatical, and what experiences do you personally hope to get from that and bring back to the university?
Well, again, going to China will be very significant. And the one, on sabbatical, you're not supposed to really do anything but do research, but I've already been asked to do a bunch of things about developing student relationships in Southeast Asia. So we've had some preliminary discussions, like in Vietnam, for students that might come here, or us set relationships up there. Again, it will be starting to do research again, seriously. Although 2 years ago, I did write an article that was published. And that was my concern 2 years ago, that, oh my Lord, will I be able to go back and do this, sit down and write an article? And it worked out fine, and I taught like a third of a class the summer before last. So I'm looking forward to it. I always had fun teaching, although I never thought I'd be a professor. So I never thought I'd be a university president either. And I did literally protest when I was said, someday you'll be a university president. And I'd say, no way, I'll never be an administrator. So watch out, everybody. It can catch you too.
So what would you say, looking back now, what has been the most rewarding part of your job?
Yeah, I feel like I'm beating the drum here. The most rewarding part of my job really has been watching the opportunities that students have been given and they've taken advantage of. There's a lot of institutions where things are put out and people don't take advantage of them. There's some things we could do better. I'd like to see more students go study overseas for a semester, and we're working on that. So that'll be exciting. But again, for me, it's always revolved around the students. I always laugh, and come 3 weeks from now, everyone will say, "Oh, the students are gone, thank God." But by July, everybody's going, "When are the students coming back? I wish the students were here." And that's what it's all about. So, and I've certainly I've felt very. I've been acknowledged a lot by the community. It's the point where I'm embarrassed by going to things and they give me an award. But the fact is, it was all the people here that did it. So I've always tended to revolve around students. At St. Joseph's, I was a director of first-year orientation for 8 years, and so just because I wanted to be essentially the first professor the students would meet. And I'm not going to go back and take over orientation. Maybe I'll help the Red Scare, but that would be good.
And what would you say was the most difficult event or moment for you personally in your time as president here at UD?
By far the most difficult event is the death of a student. And you can't help but feel ask yourself the question: could you have done something different? And suicide is very difficult. One death, a Chinese student who had a car accident. I happen to know his parents, and I think that time it was having known the young man in high school, and knowing it was an accident, and knowing that in China at that time the policy was that a family could only have one child. This was the child they had invested everything in, and they had entrusted, their only child here at UD, probably because they knew me. But that was personally very hard. But any time a student is injured, a death is really the most traumatic time for the whole administration. And again, student development in particular, Bill Fisher, you're always asking questions, and it's very hard, on the student body too, because on a couple occasions where students took their own life, these are students that were very popular and very active. So, that's probably traumatizes you most.
What advice do you have for Dr. Sabina as he embarks on this presidency?
Well, we've spent a lot of time together, and as I said, we were together for 3 days. We went to St. Louis, the NCAA's together, so we've gotten to know each other. And my advice for him would be, First of all, don't wear orange anywhere on campus. I told him, don't show up at the basketball game, because here we are playing Syracuse, the university he's been at for 23 years. So no orange stuff, you know, and he's Flyers red, no doubt about it. So he's made that transition. I think he has to be himself, and I'll tell you why. Because having spent this much time with him, he's a very humble person. I've watched him interact with students and alumni, and he really, I think, grasped the essence of the university. And he's very aware that, you know, a president who would come to the university and separate himself or herself from the student body, it would be, you know, a difficult situation, because there's an expectation that the president can be accessible, and that's part of the fun of the job, as I said earlier. So, you know, a bright person, he'll do things different. I'm a sociologist, he's an engineer, so there'll be some things that are different in style, there's no doubt. But once the students get to know him, they'll realize his personality matches UD very well. And so I think the one thing the student body could do would be invite him, you know, to make sure you get him to the right events, you know, and I think very highly of him. And it was funny because we named him very early relative to other universities. And at first, and I think we both shared this, 10 months, we got to wait to make this transition. That's a long time. But within the 10 months, you know, we've gotten to know each other, and he's gotten to know the institution very well. And me getting to know him, you're always a little bit apprehensive about letting something go that you love so much. Like, well, what's going to happen? And when you get, again, in a relationship with a person and hear what he or she says, in this case with Eric, it really alleviated some of the concern. And you know, my role next year, and just as Brother Ray was with me, is you're present but you're silent. And if the president needs you, if Eric Spina needs you to help on something, you're there for him. But you know, I do want to go like to reunion weekends and stuff. I'll just go on a different. I'll do it without a golf cart to make it easier. So, you know, it's just connecting with the students and the faculty. And we actually were in Washington to be with the community, the Dayton Development Coalition. So he's making those contacts now. So I think he has the right strategy outlined already, and you know, I think it'll be a lot of fun this first year for him.
All right, well, Dr. Dan, those are all the questions we have for you today. We really appreciate you taking out the time and wish you the best on sabbatical this upcoming year. We're going to miss you here at UD.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. And for more coverage on this story, feel free to check out flyernews.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and SoundCloud.